50,000 years ago, a space rock slammed into Earth and made a big boom. This meteorite was only about 50 meters, 160 feet wide, but it weighed a whopping 300,000 tons. When it smashed down into the ground, it flattened everything in the vicinity. It left a crater so lunar-like that astronauts trained there before landing on the moon. Yeah, this is Meteor Crater in Arizona. Meteor Crater, there have been many impacts like this one in the long history of Earth. If this meteorite were to slam into New York today, it would destroy most of the city. The impact would leave a crater 3 kilometers, 8 miles wide. But the fireball would spread further. Everything within 7 kilometers, 1 miles of the impact zone would burn. Even on the outskirts of New York City, the windows would shatter and many people would perish. It would take years to recover from this disaster. But this is nowhere close to the size of some of the largest asteroid impacts Earth has seen. Some of them were so gigantic that if they smashed into us today, they would cause our extinction. Yarrabubba Crater, most of these asteroids crashed when Earth was very young. Well, at least in planetary years. Some 2 billion years ago, a pretty big asteroid made its way down to Earth, where Australia is now. It left the oldest confirmed crater on our planet. Yarrabubba Crater doesn't look like much today. But when it made its fatal landing, it shook the planet quite a lot. Yarrabubba scarred the continent with a crater 70 kilometers, 44 miles wide. It wiped out everything in its way with a massive shockwave. Scientists even think it helped end the ice age that Earth was going through by creating so much vapor that it changed the climate. Now imagine this giant landing on Earth today. If it hit Australia again and left a 70 kilometers, 44 miles crater there, the fireball would spread for 130 kilometers, 80 miles, in all directions. If it set a course for New York, it would decimate the entire city. Even on the outskirts, everything would be on fire, and you'd get third-degree burns. But things could get so much worse if an asteroid even larger than that hit us. Like the one that crashed into Earth 8 billion years ago. Sudbury Basin, this giant comet punctured the ground and shattered the rock. It left a crater 130 kilometers, 81 miles, wide where Canada is today. We call this crater Sudbury Basin, and it's one of the largest asteroid impacts Earth has seen in its history. 8 billion years ago was a violent time for our planet. The atmosphere was changing, and continents were on the move, shaking and rupturing the land on their way. Massive asteroid collisions were part of a regular day back then. Now, if this comet hit us today, it would be a total doomsday scenario. Yeah, if the Sudbury Basin impactor landed in New York City today, there wouldn't be a New York City. It would feel like being caught in an earthquake that measured an 11 on the Richter scale. Everything would be shaking from this immense and loud shockwave. And everything 300 kilometers, 186 miles, from the impact would instantly ignite. This is what the impact would look like if it landed in France. Yeah, there's no chance you're surviving this. And we haven't even got to the biggest impact yet. It's time for the dinosaur-wiping asteroid. Chicxulub Crater 65 million years ago, an asteroid at least 10 kilometers, 2 miles, wide smashed into Earth, where Mexico is now, and violently ended the era of giant reptiles. Now, imagine that same impact today. And, well, yeah, it would be incredibly violent. The asteroid would leave a crater 180 kilometers, 112 miles wide. And the fireball? The fireball would burn everything in a 450 kilometers, 280 miles radius. If this asteroid hit New York, its effects would spread as far as Canada. And the impact would be so painfully loud that it would deafen you. You wouldn't just hear it. You'd feel violent vibrations in your entire body. And if this big space rock doubled down on Mexico, well, much of the country would see the same fate the region saw when the dinosaurs died. Enormous shockwaves would cause widespread destruction of hundreds of kilometers beyond the impact site. And just like 65 million years ago, the impact would cause a massive tsunami. Okay, it's bad. Really bad. But let's finally get to our #1 largest impact in history. Cue the Vredefort asteroid. The largest, almost the oldest, and the most terrifying space event on our planet's record. Vredefort Crater, 2 billion years ago, a gigantic asteroid slammed into where South Africa is today. It obliterated everything. It likely changed the Earth's climate. And it most definitely killed whatever lived here before the dinosaurs. This same impact today would bring enormous death and destruction. This deadly space rock would obliterate everything for hundreds of kilometers. The crater from the impactor would be as wide as 300 kilometers, 186 miles, and the fireball would spread for 750 kilometers, 466 miles in all directions. Intense shock waves would rush across the continent. Add to this tsunamis, earthquakes, and wildfires, and this would be a horrifying disaster. Nothing in the area could survive this. But what's worse is that the disaster wouldn't end there. All the debris, dust, and gases from the impact would block the sunlight and pollute the atmosphere. We'd be like the dinosaurs during their last days. Temperatures would plummet. The sudden climate change would cause a massive extinction event. Earth would become a pretty barren place, and humanity might not be able to come back from this. Maybe it's best to nuke an asteroid like this before it ever reaches Earth.